Hey everybody, welcome to Google to the Max. Getting more from Google, research techniques and tips. My name is Professor Wayne. I'll be your metal detecting consultant and research associate today. Let's get into it. So this is Professor Wayne's world. This is where I'm sitting right now, Command Central. This is where I do all the work for the research and for putting these things together. Let me talk about Google a little bit. Here's a little bit of trivia for you. It's the most common search engine utilized. 86% of the world's web searches are done with Google. They estimate over several billion searches a day are done with Google. That's amazing to me. I know this is a regular staple for me. I use it every day. It's just amazing that that many searches are being done. It's crazy. And what happens is many people tell me they do research, and I ask them, what do you do? Most often I hear I use Google, and I'll say, hey, that's cool. It's a popular search engine. I use it myself. But what most people do not realize is that Google is very limited. The Google algorithm, the way it works, is very good. I mean, it's excellent. It's designed to make your life easier. However, sometimes you may not really be getting the results you want or the best results. You might have experienced that. So that's what we're going to talk about today is like how maybe to maximize your use of Google. An interesting thing about Google, if you look at it, is that Google is really just on the surface of the internet. And it's really only getting the tip of the iceberg. It may be on the top of the peak, and it may be the #1 search engine out there, but it's really just recognizing a tip of the iceberg. You see like 4% of it is what Google will index. The rest of it we're going to talk a little bit more about, maybe in another video get into more detail, is the deep web and the dark web. Now, the deep web is something that's where a lot of the documents are kept that you'd be interested in if you're doing some research, because the academic information is there, research information in there, there's a lot of stuff there. But in order to get into the deep web, you need special browsers. And there's pros and cons to it as well. And we'll talk about that in another time too. It's really interesting. The deep web is really cool. The dark web, that's someplace you don't want to be. The dark web, in fact, most people can't get to it. In order to get to the dark web, you actually have to have an invite normally. The crew that runs and uses that dark web, they're not the kind of people you'd want to associate with. These are the terrorists and the people that cause a lot of issues for people. Some countries actually totally ban the use of the deep or dark web by people because they really don't want people using that kind of stuff, obviously because of the terrorism part, but also just for the news sharing information. Because one thing about the deep web and the dark web is that everything you do there is anonymous, so it's really confidential, and people don't know who you are. That's how you know you're on the deep web or the dark web, is that they don't know who you are. You're using multiple servers across the internet, so tracking you is not possible. And we'll talk about that with Google. It's just the opposite. Google follows every move you make, whether you're using private settings or not, doesn't matter. Google knows where you are and what you've been doing. So it's actually quite useless for the deep web or dark web searches. So it's not going to get really very much details out of those two places. It only indexes, like I said, the surface web. And like I said, 96% of the internet is located in the deep or the dark web. So it's missing a lot. Still good. But the way most people use a search engine is not effective. The average person, myself included, types in a few words, relies on Google to do the rest. It's pretty much standard practice, right? So oftentimes the results are either too broad or really not focused. You notice that sometimes what you're looking for you're not finding. So the search engine optimization, which is a big concept today, is a very popular subject. Getting the most from different search engines is a very popular thing to learn more about. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. Because I was doing this, I just did some tests, and I wanted to see how it would work. So I just put into Google finding cellar holes, something many metal detectors are interested in. And I looked at it, and it was like 1,360,000 results in 0.59 seconds. That's like a crazy number of results, and you could spend the rest of your life going through all those results. So there's got to be a way to do this a little bit better. So that's what we're going to talk about. A takeaway, though, from this in Google and search engine researching basically is that you really need to learn and utilize advanced and very specific research techniques and tools to really be a game changer. If you've seen my other videos on game changing, like introduce some of these concepts, there's a lot of different tools in a toolbox. And researching using Google is one of those tools. It's not the all-purpose tool, but it's a very good tool. And like anything that you do, any job you have, anything that you're into, hobbies or anything, there's usually like a set of terms that are new for, or just unique to that hobby or profession. It's like acronyms that but the average person wouldn't know if they weren't involved in that. Same is true with the library. And I promote the library because I think it's a wonderful place and you really need to spend some time there. Even though so much can be done on the internet, it really is going to end up at a library at some point to really maximize your resources. And the library terms or their lingo, there is a whole nother language. Like when you talk about Boolean searching techniques, truncation, it's also known as stemming. You talk about keywords versus subjects, using search fields, compared to like when we do just searching cornfields, not the same thing. Using phrases, using step words, comparing the top search engines. Google is only one of several. There's many search engines out there. Each has their pros and cons. And then comparison of the top meta search engines. Meta search engines actually combine the best of multiple engines all in one. We'll talk about that probably if you're interested in another video, because there's a whole talk in and of itself. But my guess is that the average detectorist really does not use any of these terms or techniques, maybe not even familiar with them. And that's the limitation, all right? And that's what we're going to touch upon a little bit, particularly the searching techniques, some tips. I just collected, there's many tips out there. And what I did was I just collected some of the more common ones, things that you may hear or may want to know because they'll make a difference. And I'll try to show you that as we go. So what is search operators? This is what when talk about Boolean operators, they're called search operators. What are they? They're characters, symbols, or commands, phrases that you use to tell Google what to do for you. Basically, that's what's going on. And what happens is when you put these all together, you make a query, and the response to that query is what you'll be looking for. Hopefully, it'll give you the information that you're seeking. Now, it's kind of hit or miss sometimes, so you got to keep your fingers crossed. That's that little cartoon. Or when it's working, it's like great. When it's really on target, it's great. But there's constantly changing, as I mentioned, these operators and the search operators that are used. Some are discontinued, some are continued. Google is constantly trying to improve the product, and that's a good thing for everyone. So this is going to be a collection of tips for you. One of the first ones that and when I was researching this, I wanted to try to get the things that you might use on a regular basis. And a lot of people really like image searches. And when you look at Google, when you first use it, you'll see that there's various tabs that are there. So if you go across the tabs here, you'll see that like there's all, then there's a category shopping, then there's the image one, and then there's video, news, and then there's more. Well, this one I did seller holes, finding seller holes. This time, what I wanted to do was the image one. So that was the appropriate thing. That's what I wanted to see is some of these things about seller holes. And then there's links from there into the articles that I would be interested in. So this was using just the same search, but this time isolating it to one tab in particular, which was the image tab. Now, there's a second thing that you'll hear people talk about, and I thought this was really kind of cool when I first heard of it, is a tilde. That's that little squiggly line, and I'll show you where it's on your keyboard. Well, what happens is it takes the word immediately following it and then searches both for that word, that specific word, and any synonyms, words that mean the same. So that way, it does expand your search for you, and it just helps you out. Now, and it can also search for the term with alternate endings, okay? The tilde operator works best when it's applied to general terms and terms that have many synonyms. That's the best use of that tilde. And this is where it is. On the keyboard, you see it's usually up in the top left corner. To access it, you'll see that it's on that little special key. And again, the tilde function is a nice little function. The one thing about the tilde operator was that Google actually disbanded it. They stopped using it. And then I think some people were complaining about it, so they actually brought it back. So that's kind of a cool thing, but it comes and goes. It's one of those features that Google decides whether or not it's being used and not used, and what's the advantage. So just to give you an example here, I did coin tilde collecting, and we got 83 million hits. And then I just did coin collecting, and we only got 59 million. So I increased my yield, okay, significantly, 20 million hits, by adding that collecting tilde, which means that it was looking for words that were similar to collecting, all right? And again, it just makes it more focused into what you might be looking for, and it just gives you more choices here. So that's kind of the cool thing about that. Now, the third thing, and moving along, quotes. When you use quotations, putting the search tag within the quotes returns listings with an exact match of that text. So here I put two things to give you, again, show you an example. I did a search for quotations Knox 800. You notice that I got 47,100 results in 0.6 seconds. It's crazy. And then I just put Knox 800. And you notice what happened was I only got 17,300,000. Well, actually, I got a lot more, because what it was doing is that it was looking for both Knox and 800. It didn't know which term to really search for, so it searched for everything. So you get like this unmanageable number, 17 million. Whereas when you focused it, and that was the whole idea of what I was trying to say, is when you put the quotes, it focused it just on the Knox 800. So those articles that you're getting, the 47,000, that's a lot more focused than having 17 million. That was the point of this. Now, another hyphen. If you use the hyphen, the word after the hyphen will be excluded. So in this one, I did another example. I just figured by example you could see better what I'm trying to say. And I'm a visual kind of learner, and I'm hoping you might be as well. But metal detector whites, okay? I got 48,700,000 hits in 0.6 seconds. That's crazy. When I took out the whites, metal detector without the whites, okay, it became less specific with just whites, and it went up to 369 million hits. So you can see by eliminating that word, it changed everything. So that's, again, your task, and what this is really about is to see these different things that are out there. And there's a lot of websites that will give you this information, and use this information and tailor your research queries, or using these different tools to your advantage, because only you know really what it is that you're looking for and what you're hoping to find. And by using a combination of these, hopefully it'll help you. So let's move on. I'll give you some more. Other assorted search tips and comments. All right. 2 dots. If you put 2 periods between numbers, it'll search for a range. So say an application there might be like looking for certain dates, and you want it within a specific range of dates. Well, you put the first date, you put 2 dots, and then you put the other date, and what it'll do is it'll focus it between that specific dates. Again, it's targeting your focus. Then there's another tip. It's called cite colon. And then after the cite colon, you put the website that you want to utilize, where you're interested in going. And that cite colon, treasurenet.com is just the one I use as an example, would mean that would be the site it would search for anything that you're trying to research. So it would go to that site specifically. Now there's one very similar to it that's called link, and in this kind I just use linknewyorktimes.com. It's much more specific, but you may get fewer hits from it, but it's very similar in that regard. And then there's an asterisk, and when you use the asterisk, it's really a wild card. If you're not sure what word to use, sometimes what the asterisk will do is it'll just put it as a blank in there, and it will fit in like different words to see which one fits for you. So it's kind of a nice way when you're not sure what word that you're looking for, you can put that in there, and it's a nice little feature. Now another thing that you can also do without the asterisk is you can use brackets. Just put a bracket around your words. When you do that, it'll include all the words in the bracket. It'll give it priority, that those words that are within those brackets are going to be what it focuses on, and that's really kind of pretty cool. Then there's another term, there's another tip, related:google.com. And what that does is, instead of just using Google, it'll show alternative hits that you would get from Yahoo and Bing, the other players in the game. So it's actually focusing it on more than just Google. It's looking at things that are like Google or related to Google to help you out too. So that's pretty cool. And then when you start looking for specific file types, a lot of times you may want to download something. I mean, Google Docs I mean, everything is Google today, right? So there's Google Docs. But you also have, sometimes it's easier to work with PDF files, and sometimes it's easier to work with just DOC files, or whatever file form type you want to use, depending on what system that you're using. You can actually look for and specify what file type that you want. So that's what you have to type in, file type colon, and then the type of extension that you want, either PDF, doc, or so forth. Okay, now there's also, you have the or. And it's not with the quotations, it's just the word or the stand up. It looks like a letter I, but it's just really a stand up bracket, straight up and down. And that gives you either or. So it just gives you, the thing is, you want 2 things, you put the or sign in, and it'll give you the relationship for both. So it's or, and this and or that, okay, is what it does. Pretty cool. Google suggests keeping it simple. This is kind of an important point. when you're first doing a search, a lot of times a problem that people have is they write too much. And when you write too much, it actually confuses Google. But what it does is it tries to search for every word that you're writing. And that's the problem, is it gets really not very specific, even though you're trying to be more detailed. So what Google suggests is just keep it really simple and do your initial search. And we're talking about all of these things. You may have to play around a little bit. It's not like one answer is going to work every single time. You're going to have to change your searching methods and maybe change what these tips that you're using, these operators that you're using to get the one that's most effective for you and what you're trying to accomplish. But Google suggests keeping it simple and then adding more terms if you're not getting the information that you want. And I'll give you an example of that in a minute. Using professional terms. A lot of times Google doesn't recognize slang. So it sometimes does, and I'll show you an example of that too. It will recognize slang, but usually when the websites are structured and they have professional terms, that's what it's going to be looking for, those professional terms. So suggest using those whenever possible. And then important words like a and the and some of those extra words. It's not necessary. It really is not necessary. Google doesn't care whether you have the extra words in there. You don't need complete sentences. Grammar is not important. Even spelling is not important to Google. It mostly can figure it out for you if you give it to it. So here's an example. All right, I thought this is kind of cool. You do define can slot. This is like, you know, the awful thing that we have to deal with in the fields oftentimes when the lawnmower hits those aluminum cans and shreds them. So I put define can slot, which is, you know, what we're looking for. If you notice, I got 96 million hits for a defined can slot because it's searching for both those terms. And then I put just can slot, and it was kind of cool. When I just put can slot, it actually got a really good definition, and it actually popped up a bunch of images for it. Kind of a cool t-shirt there. And I thought that was funny when it said, seriously, I hunt for hours, and all I end up with is can slot. You know, it's like I said, it's like our pull tab we end up with. But then I tried something a little bit different, and I just wanted to see how it would happen. And I did a search again, but this time I put metal detecting can slot, and it was really kind of cool because it took it down and narrowed it down from, if you look at the previous slide, it went from like, you know, thousands to 5,430, which I thought was really kind of cool. And then it actually gave me some videos on it, which I thought were interesting, but just something a little bit different. All right, so a few more tips as we go. Spelling, as I said before, is not critical. Google is very forgiving, and it will try to figure out, if you give it about what it sounds like, it'll try to figure it out for you. That's pretty cool. Capitalization is not important. Uppercase, lowercase, doesn't matter. Even grammar, it really doesn't matter. What I suggest, and this is what I do all the time, is that I'll repeat my questions. I'll use different words, different orders. And what's kind of cool is to watch what happens with your hits. I've been showing you like these hits that after you do a query, but what's cool is even if you use the same words, when it does its search, and I'll explain how Google works in a little while. Someone asked me like, how does that actually happen? So I put together a few slides just to explain exactly what's going on in Google, what's Google doing out there for you, and I'll explain that. But it's kind of cool because you get different hits based on when you do it. You know, I did it like a few seconds apart. I did the same search and I was getting different hits. It's just what it finds during that 0.6 seconds, half a second. It's just crazy. Now, some things that probably don't have much of an application for us for detecting, but Google does math too. It can do very complex math and some really basic math, but Google will do that for you. And if you use the right terms, the right operators. And then, as I said, I think the answer to this is using combinations of operators. And what I suggest is just do it, have fun with it, experiment. I definitely believe it'll be a game changer for you in terms of the quality of your research and quality of what you're going to get back just by trying some of these things that are out there. Google is constantly adding, deleting operators and trying to make your life more efficient, because if it makes your life more efficient, then you'll use it more. And if you use it more, they're benefiting from it. That's basically what it's about. They are trying to make your life, but it's self-serving for them as well. I know that when I was doing a search to get some of the information for this, I used a lot of different internet sites. I can't say any one in particular is greater than another. They all vary, and they also have a lot of things in common. I picked the ones that I think are the most common operators that you might encounter, although I did find one website that had like 40 different ones, and some of them were pretty obscure, and some of them really weren't related to metal detecting per se, like finding weather. That wasn't something that would necessarily, unless you wanted to check the weather before you went out, that's a good thing. But there were some operators that I didn't really see the application, so I left them out. But if you do a search, and now you're very capable of doing that, you'll find more operators if you want to, or just hone your skills. My suggestion and what I do is I just have like a little index card, and I just keep that near me. So when I'm doing searching and I'm trying to figure out like what I'm looking for, then I'll look and try the different operators that I mentioned and see which one gives me the results that I'm looking for. And over time, you'll find that you kind of rely on certain ones. And like the ones I mentioned, especially at the beginning, those are ones that I use all the time because they're more effective for me. They've been very effective, and I get what I'm looking for. But it's fun. It's fun. Part of it's just like learning it is fun. But it will make your life better and more efficient for the research aspect for sure. And this applies not just to metal detecting. I'm talking about like I use Google for everything. Home repairs. Learning how to do something new. So any of these techniques are really cross-disciplinary. It really doesn't matter. So how does Google work? All right. There are essentially three parts to the process, and I thought this was really kind of interesting. Googlebot is Google's web crawler robot. It finds retrieved pages on the web, and it gives it to Google Indexer, which is the second part. So Googlebot, it's not really a digital robot wandering the internet. That was my imagine. Like when it said it was a robot, I thought, oh, this like cool little digital thing running around the internet. That's not what it's doing. What a Googlebot is really a collection of computers. And those collection of computers, what they do is they send requests out across the internet to all the different web servers that are out there looking for pages, web pages. And what they do is they download that entire page and they hand it off to what they call the indexer. Okay. Now this is a lot quicker than you doing a search on your web browser because of the vast number of computers that they have doing this simultaneously. All right. It can request lots of different pages all at the same time, which is much more efficient than what you can do in a single browser on your own. But it actually does this. It's interesting. It doesn't do it quickly. It does it very slowly because it's over time. It's like a constant thing. It's like 24/7. But what it's doing is it doesn't want to bog down those web servers because if it was constantly hammering those web servers, it could tie them up. And then if you do that, then you're not going to have any efficiency at all. So the idea is that it would not bog them down by just going slow. So it's not in a rush. It just wants to do it. So once these Google bots harvest this information from these web servers, the web pages, it gives it over to the indexer. Now this part of the program, what it does is it takes every word on that page and it analyzes that word, the page, the stories in it, and it places those words into a database. This is an alphabetized database, an index. And it does ignore like the common words like is, and, how, why, etc. The really common words. It's not going to index those, not necessary. So it's going to go after the important words. But that's what it's going to be doing is creating a database that can be accessed later. That's the whole idea. So how does that work? Well, the final step is the query processor. That's the third step. And what that is the actual search box. It's the interface, the search box. And what the search engines do, they evaluate the query, all right, when you put that query in, and then they look for the relevant data from their database. And then it lists everything for you and ranks everything for you as most important to least important. That's why a lot of times when you do a search, you have multiple pages with your results. You got millions of hits. And then what it does is it kind of breaks it down with the idea that this is going to be more important at the top and less important as you go down. And sometimes I've seen the message where it says, do you really want me to go on? Because it's probably not going to be very accurate to what you're looking for. And it's your choice because it always puts the best it can find related to your search query to the operators right at the top. And that's really kind of cool. All right, conclusion. I tried to keep this short. It's not one of my 2-hour videos like I did on the Sodbusters, their game changer video. This is just a short little review of it. You can watch it again because it's so short, just to pick up and maybe take some notes on some of those operators that you may want to try again. Or like I said, just you can Google it, search them, and you'll find them as well. So Google's pretty awesome. As you can see, I like it. I use it all the time. It's a great tool to have in your search, in your research toolbox, absolutely. However, there are some serious privacy issues for people, and this bothers some people when they hear about this, and it may bother you too, is that Google tracks everything you do. Even if you use, and I know you've seen that private search part, like it gives you that like option, you can do this privately, and what it does is it doesn't remember where you've been in the searching. That's garbage, to be honest with you. It may not show you what you've done or present it on the computer after you're finished, but it remembers, it stores it. Your internet service provider keeps all of that information, so it's still out there no matter where you've been. It knows where you've been, and Google does remember. When people hear that, it's like, that's not such private anymore, and that's true. So if you ever wonder, and you want a truth in point, if you ever wonder why your ads, after you've been using Google for a while, seem really like customized based on your interests, well, it's remembering where you've been and what kinds of things you're looking at to see that that's what you'd want to see in the future, because this is all about money. It's a business, and they're trying to match your interest with the ads that they're going to hit you with. So that's what that's about. But, okay, there's an alternative, and that's what I'm going to talk about probably in another video if you're interested. And that's for those of you not liking having someone watch over your shoulder and do every search that you do, there are alternatives. And I'm planning to do a video series. On my group page, I asked people, I did a poll. I said, what was it that you're most interested in? Because I'm not going to create the videos if people aren't interested in them. And this one was the first one that had the most hits, and people were interested in learning how to use Google because it's something everyone does. But I also asked what other kinds of things you might be interested in. And second place on there was, how about some of the other search engines? Google's cool, but what are the other options that I have? Because there are options. And like I said, some of the options are really kind of neat in the fact that they are designed to give you that privacy that you may be seeking. And then, as I mentioned, we didn't even touch upon it really, is that deep web. And you're not going to go to the dark web. There's no reason to. But the deep web, absolutely. There's research articles there, journals, things that are very, very useful in terms of research that you won't find anywhere else, other than maybe a library. But you won't find that at pretty much anywhere else. And the only way to access that is to use some special servers that are designed for that purpose. So the searching techniques. So we'll talk about that if you're interested in another video. Keep tuned for that. But thanks for watching this one. I hope you learned something as much as I did from just putting it together. There's a ton of internet resources out there, and if you wish to check them out, now you know how to do it. The other thing is use your library, because as I said in my other videos, the library is your friend. And like some of those terms I mentioned at the beginning, the library words, those things that are used by librarians, if you go in having an understanding, maybe you don't understand how to use all of them, but if you understand that and you have a conversation with a librarian, it's going to show them that you spend some time, understanding and trying to understand what they're all about, because they have no clue as to what detecting the average librarian's never detected before. So it's like a partnership. And that partnership can benefit you, and it keeps them busy. I mean, they have all this advanced education. They've learned all this really cool stuff, and it just gives them an application for it, and they love it. So, as I said, they're your friends, and no matter how much you do on the internet, which is great, and it's comfortable in your home, many of you are going to still end up at the library at some point, because there are resources that they can still offer you that even the internet cannot. As I said, it's very limited in the grand scheme of things as what's out there. And librarians can offer and get for you references, resources, hard copies of things that you may want to read, like the old-fashioned way. And there's nothing wrong with that either. So this is my business card. It's actually my new business card. Again, my name is Wayne Aguirre, consultant. My phone number is here. If you have a phone and you hold it up to that QR code, it will give you my email address. But my email address is WA-WayneAguirre@detectforyou@gmail.com. One of my services is I try to help people out if they lose something, try to find it for them. As I said in my other videos, I'm at a point now in my career, it's just giving back. Why am I teaching you this kind of stuff? Because I want to make your life easier. I've made the mistakes, and if you can learn from my mistakes, and I'm still learning all this stuff, a lot of this was new for me, and I can't wait to use some of this. I think it'll be really exciting. And I like to talk to like-minded people. We all have this passion. Why not share that? And, I put together a Facebook group, and again, this is my ad for my Facebook group. It's not a commercial site by no means. I do and will be doing this commercially. I just set up my first YouTube channel. I'm so excited. I put my first video out about finding GPS coordinates from photographs, because people ask me, like, how do I protect my sites? And I had someone say that, someone was trying to figure out where his cellar holes were, and he was afraid to post pictures of it because he had heard that if you post pictures, you can actually identify where the location was, and it's true, you can. So I did a video about that and how to protect your sites and how to hide that GPS data, or if you're trying to find the GPS data, how to find it as well. So I did both sides. So that's the first video that's out there. This is our second. So if you have a phone and you hold it up to that QR code, I tested it before, it'll take you into our Facebook group. And again, we have about 170 members, and it's growing. It just started a few weeks ago, and I'm so proud to say that people are really catching on. This whole thing about, being like I call lone wolves and not sharing tips and secrets. The whole purpose of this group is to share and learn from each other. So I hope you have that same opinion and feeling, and you'll join us. I'd love to have your expertise there. Just think about it. Collectively, we have all this expertise that's out there at all levels. People that are just starting, or just people that have been doing this for a long time. I've been doing this for like 37 years, but that doesn't mean anything. I'm learning something every day. And we welcome new people as well as people that have been doing this. There are people, I just asked a friend of mine, and he said he's been doing it for 54 years. He started when he was 8 years old. That's like incredible to me. And his finds show it. And he's doing these techniques and some of the advanced techniques that I talked about in the video. So again, if you want to be a medical detecting game changer, join our group. I'll welcome you. I'd love to see you there. Let me know that you heard about it here. If you really like this video, hit subscribe. I'm just building, like I said, this is only my second video. I definitely don't have the number of subscribers that you need. Maybe in 3 or 4 years, if I'm lucky, maybe I could monetize it, but that's not my point right now. My point is just to share with you some of this stuff. So again, happy hunting, coils to the soil and sand, because we have a pirate theme in our group, by the way, and you have to join our group to learn more about that maybe. But thank you for coming. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. I hope you got something out of it, and have a great day.